everybody. George, we'll go get started. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming tonight. I think I saw a couple people coming in, but we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Joe Dulin. For those that don't know me, I'm the Assistant Community Development Director. Tonight's meeting is kind of an informational session on a proposal that we have in front of City Council. Two Tuesdays ago, was the first reading of introducing a land bank in the city of Peoria. I'm going to go through the presentation tonight, kind of talk to you a little bit about how we got to this point, and then also the different structure and what the next steps will be. One thing I do want to point out is tonight is not really to talk about the strategy that the land bank will take to address vacant and abandoned properties in the city of Peoria. Our hope is if this does get approved, there will be a board in place and a land manager position. And at that point, we'll hold additional public input meetings to get public input and work with public directly to create that strategy and plan. But before we do that, we want to make sure the board and the position's in place so they can directly hear from the residents. So tonight's meeting is more to get kind of some feedback and questions about the structure of what it'll look like, and also just talk about what a land bank could do in the future and what it could look like. But the actual strategy of what we'll implement specifically in the neighborhoods.
Are you saying we can't make comments tonight?
No, I'm saying tonight we're talking about the structure of the land bank and the proposal. We're not necessarily talking about the land strategy that the land bank will implement. Yeah, you can make comments about whatever you would like tonight.
Okay, I didn't see a place to do that. So
yeah. Yep. So with that, the pointer didn't work, so Megan is going to be helping me. The next one. So, you know, the proposal in front of council is for the city of Peoria to create a land bank. And sometimes people ask, what is a land bank? And it's a hard thing to define specifically in Illinois right now because they can take a lot of different shapes of what they do. Land banks started kind of more historically in Michigan and Ohio, in New York, and they've been pretty successful in some of those locations. But some of that success has to do with different state legislation that allows them to kind of fund themselves. And Illinois isn't quite there yet, but from what we've heard from the state legislators, and the governor's office and the different departments there, they're headed towards being much more supportive of land banks, which could also include additional funding in the future. Go to the next slide. So what does land banks look like in Illinois specifically? Cook County is kind of the one that started it all in Illinois. When we started having these discussions back in 2012 about kind of land strategies and things like that, Councilman Weaver and Councilwoman Moore at the time started looking at the different land banks and what they could look like. But Illinois legislation was very quiet on whether they could or couldn't be a land bank in the Illinois. And Cook County, like Chicago usually does, just decided to make one anyways. So they created the Cook County Land Bank and kind of were the trend center in doing it. Since then, there's been a few more that have formed over the last 3 years. The Central Illinois Land Bank, which is Vermilion County, Champaign County, and the city of Decatur. The South Suburban Land Bank, which is just some of the south suburbs up around Chicago. The Northern Illinois Land Bank, which is Winnebago County, and the city of Rockford essentially is that land bank. And then there's others that are kind of exploring the idea around the state of Illinois, including Lake County, the Quincy area, Quad Cities, etc. But it is a very new concept in Illinois, so more communities are exploring it and seeing what it could do to help with vacant and abandoned properties in their area. So we kind of set up the presentation to kind of go over, I put some questions in it. We'll make the presentation available on our website too for anyone who wants a copy of it as well, or if you want to share it. In addition, we are streaming. We're recording the thing tonight, so it'll be on the City of Peoria's YouTube page as well, if you want to go back and listen to it or share it with anyone else. So one of the questions we get asked and we've gotten asked is, the city owns a lot of vacant lots now. How is that any different than being a land bank? That's a really good question. We've been doing a lot of land banking activities, but we haven't necessarily formally created a land bank in Peoria until now. That was part of the discussion we've had with IDA over the last 3 years. So to go back a little bit, In 2018, the city of Peoria received a grant from IDA in the Land Bank Capacity Program. The program allowed, we got $150,000. The first $50,000 was allowed for feasibility studies related to land banking, and then some technical assistance related to land banking activities and different blight remediation efforts. And then if we went forward and created an actual land bank, the other $100,000 would be available. We worked with the technical consultant. They essentially said, like, yes, it's feasible to do a land bank in Peoria. There's a lot of vacant land, things like that. You could do that. So you could pursue that. But we felt at the time the $100,000 to create the land bank, just with the way the budget was at the city, just wasn't enough amount to actually fund it to be successful. So we didn't move forward with it because we felt the commitment of what it would take to actually succeed, the $100,000 wouldn't cover it. They approached us about a month and a half ago with the Attorney General's office about once again revisiting this issue, and said that they have some more additional funds that are expiring in September 2022. It's the foreclosure settlement that Illinois received with a bunch of other states for the mortgage crisis that happened. Illinois received quite a big chunk that went to mortgage relief, but some of it went to blight remediation efforts. For those that are familiar kind of with some of the work going on in the East Bluff, the AG's office gave a group that consisted of PCCO, LISC, Navicor, METEC, the city, POF, $3 million grant back in 2015. POF and PCCO did an excellent job building some brand new construction on Barrens with that money. IFF built some duplexes in the East Bluff too, and they were able to take that $3 million they got from the AG grant and turn it to about $9 million of investment in the East Bluff. And that was from the same foreclosure money. But there's still money that actually expires in that foreclosure settlement and expires in 2022. So the Attorney General's office had a little additional money and approached us and said, well, if we gave you this additional money, do you feel that would be enough to staff up a kind of a pilot project of a land bank in Peoria? And we said yes, and they asked us for a proposal of what it would look like for us. And we really sat down with our staff and tried to evaluate what we thought a land bank in Peoria would look like to be successful. And this is kind of what we came up with. It's kind of, and we'll get through that later in the presentation, what it looks like. But that's kind of the back history of how we got there. So we've been doing yeah, that's good, sorry. We've been doing land banking activities in Peoria for a while now. So to that question of just because we own those, and we've been doing those activities and we own a bunch of city lots, there's also a lot of other opportunity that exist. Specifically around the county trustee structure process. So this is just a side note to really talk about what the county trustee process is. So if you don't pay property taxes in the city of Peoria, one of two things can happen. Your taxes go to auction, people bid on those taxes. And it goes essentially to the lowest bidder, so it starts at 18%, and then if someone else wants it, they bid 17%, 16% down, and the lowest bidder actually gets that tax note, and that's the interest rate you get. If no one bids on it, the county trustee automatically gets it for 18%. And just a note, that's 18% every 6 months. So if you fall behind on your taxes right now, the state of Illinois allows you to be charged 36% interest on your property taxes every year for 3 years, compounding, which you can imagine is not a good system at all. So luckily right now at the state level, there is some legislation that actually did pass the Senate, and I believe is in the House, to cap that interest rate on an annual basis to 12%, which is still a pretty hefty interest rate, but it's definitely not 36%. So if someone doesn't purchase the taxes on a property, the trustee essentially purchases them, they call it. So if you do go back to pay your taxes, you pay back the trustee. But what happens after 3 years, if no one has bought those taxes and the Peoria County trustee has bought those for 3 years, the property goes to an auction. And then they auction it off. People can come in and bid for a minimum bid of $800. They don't screen their people who are buying property. They just the highest bid gets it. which is not the best system, as you can imagine, in our community, because they're not screening people who might have had code violations in the past or might have owed money. So it's definitely not the best process in Illinois, and there is some legislative changes in the future to try to change some of the structure of that. The other thing that the trustee process does as well is, and this is really where a land bank can come in and really help the situation, is that we can actually take property through the abandoned property process. So what the abandoned property statute in Illinois is essentially if you haven't paid property taxes in 2 years or you've had no water service for 2 years, there's a dangerous building on the structure, and it's vacant and abandoned, the city can petition the court to get a free and clear deed to the property. So really where that comes into play is that the process I described earlier with the tax buyers. So say someone buys my property taxes in year 1 for 10% interest. I don't pay the property taxes. So then the second year I don't pay the property taxes. The third year I still don't pay the property taxes of that. So the tax buyer goes to redeem the property. Often their goal is to never own that property. They want to just get the interest. So when it comes to the point where they could actually become a deed holder of that property, essentially what they can file with the county treasurer is a sale and heir. At that point, the sale and heir, they just have to show that the condition of the property has changed. Well, obviously, after 3 years of a property sitting vacant, the condition of the property has changed. Or if the city cut the grass or did something and filed a lien on that property, that also qualifies it for a sale and heir. So after that sale and heir happens after 3 years and it goes back, it has to restart the entire county trustee process again. So essentially, it can stay in that loop for multiple years. So it can be 9 years before that property would even go to an auction to be built, and it could sit vacant. What a land bank or city can use the abandoned property statute to do is to petition the court to get that property 2 years after it's sat vacant, which is unfortunately sometimes a longer time than what would be ideal, but it's 5 or 6 quicker years than going through the whole process, and it really can help us kind of work to get those properties back into the private market much quicker and not ultimately have to demolish the property. All right, next. So, did we skip one? Nope, that's good, yeah. So as I said, in the past we've done land banking activities in the city of Peoria. We had a land manager previously, and that's who will work in this division. But previously, when we had the land manager, Susan Schloop started it back in kind of 2014 through those previous discussions that we had. She was doing it part-time and did a fantastic job working with some banks to get them to pay for demolition in the neighborhoods when they foreclose. And then Eric Setter took over that position from her. Unfortunately, in 2018, with the budget cuts we had to make, Eric took another job up in Rockford, and we didn't fill that position. So the land manager position has sat vacant for 3 years now. So we haven't had this specific focus on some of these vacant and abandonment issues that we should have. But we have seen some success with our land banking activities through the years, and a bigger focus on that can really help us in the future as well. What are some of those successes we've had through our land banking activities when we have been able to devote some energy and attention to that issue? I think what the biggest success is still in the process of working out down on Southwest Wall Adams, the Tabor property. We've owned it for about 6 years. It's an old brownfield site down right in the southern gateway as you come into the building. There's abandoned junkyards, car wash. Not a car wash. Gas station was there previously. When we acquired the property, there was probably about 2,000 tires on the back of the property, about 20, 30, 40 junk cars. So we did clear that out, but since then it's just been a brownfield site while we've been trying to apply through the US EPA to get some brownfield grants to clean it up. Luckily last year we received last October we received a $500,000 grant from the EPA to do some site remediation at that work, and then we were informed 4 or 5 months ago that we also are getting about a $900,000 grant through the state of Illinois for the cleanup work too. So in the next year or so, you'll see that site get cleaned up and hopefully transformed into either an industrial use that we can attract some more jobs, to that area, or something to generate sales tax down in that area too. But that's really strategy land banks take, is to get those properties, hold them while they get cleaned up, where the private developer in a private market isn't going to do that and sit on those properties while they wait and get cleaned up. Okay, so why are we looking to create a City of Peoria land bank now? As I said before, 2018 forced us to eliminate the land manager position. Also, just over the last 5 or 10 years, we've seen a drastic amount of new and vacant property in the City of Peoria. There's multiple legislative proposals at the state level that will specifically funnel money to land banks. There's one that hasn't gotten past the House or Senate yet, but it has the support of a couple different legislators that will specifically put a fee on the tax buy-in purchases that's non-refundable. And right now the proposal would be to funnel that back into land banks or municipalities to really work on remediation efforts. The thing I mentioned earlier about the trustee process, most of the vacant lots you see in the south end, most of the vacant lots you see just around town are owned in the trustee process. The City of Peoria mows them about 13 or 14 times a year, and the trustee is actually the trustee for all the taxing bodies. So, 50% of the school district, 12, whatever the breakdown of your property tax bill is, kind of how much each represents there. The city, though, is the one who maintains those properties. So we spend about $400,000 or $500,000 a year tearing down buildings on trustee properties and mowing the grass. And we don't see any of that money come back to us. So there is some state legislation that allows the trustee process to change a little bit and funnel some additional money back to cities and county processes to maintain and take care of those properties. So by creating a land bank and taking our next steps forward, if there are state legislative changes that go forward to funnel money to land banks for this type of effort, we'll be poised to be ready to accept that money and go forward and use it to clean up property in Peoria. The other thing we're really excited about this specific proposal is, and then we'll talk about this when I talk about the board makeup, is really concentrating a bigger focus specifically on vacant and abandoned property issues in the City of Peoria. The board's specific task will be to looking at these items. There'll be a representative from the county on it. The county treasurer will be on it, some neighborhood interests, at-large council people, and then city staff who can specifically look and study and take the time to really address vacant and abandoned property issues in the City of Peoria. So it'll add a whole extra layer of focus to those issues. And then one of the most important things is that we have, and why we're moving forward this, is an offer from IDA and the Attorney General's office for a $300,000 grant that kind of expires in September of 2022, which will allow us about an 18 or 19-month pilot program to see this work. You can go to the next one. Next one. There we go. It'll go to fund some positions specifically within the city. It'll fund a land manager who will manage and coordinate the entire land bank. They'll create a strategic and data-driven process to kind of identify the problem properties. Right now, we just don't have the staff to take that proactive approach to these abandonment issues. They'll be able to look at data, see where water bills have been shut off, see who's delinquent on property taxes, and try to get to those properties much sooner than we can now. In addition, we'll employ an employee in the legal department who can actually process these cases, so we don't get that backlog of demolition and abandoned cases that exist now because of their staffing level. And then also fund half a community service inspector who will conduct the field work required for this, kind of manage our demolition program, and then really evaluate these properties when we do get a free and clear title to see if they can be rehabbed or if they need demolished, with ultimately hoping to rehab as many as possible. So, why did we create the structure where the land bank is specifically within the community development department? Even with that funding and those staff members, it's probably not enough attention to specifically devote to these issues. By having it within a division of the community development department, we can share some additional resources with our department, in addition to coordinate with our code enforcement program, so code inspectors know what's going on with the land management program, and also utilize our building and safety and development staff when we try to get these back on the private market.
Can you go back a couple slides that said, we went right over that slide, so we could read it, that said, what happens if you didn't take the $300,000?
Sure. Couldn't we do what we were doing without creating a land bank? I mean, yeah, we could, in theory, do what we're doing without creating a land bank. We don't have the staff to do it, so we wouldn't have the $300,000 to fund the staff. But does the state legislation currently allow us to take properties as abandoned and hold properties? Yes, we just don't have the staff that's able to do that. Like I said, and I did talk about this, we'd miss out on future funding opportunities if they did exist, and kind of miss out on the opportunity to create this board and focus on the issue specifically.
Per IDA, they only required that you look into starting a land bank to get any of their funding. Has the city agreed to or signed off on any documents that says that we will create the land bank to get the money?
So the $150,000, and I'll answer this, but then let's wait till the end and we can answer then. But the $150,000 that we got in 2018, $50,000 was for the feasibility and technical assistance, with a contingency. If we want access to that other $100,000, we have to create a land bank, and then the additional $200,000 would be contingent on creating a land bank. So the current proposal for the board makeup, the 3 at-large council members appointed. All of these positions, like all board positions, are appointed by the mayor and approved by city council. The reason we chose to do at-large districts members versus district members is really it is a citywide land bank. It's not specifically focused in one neighborhood, one part of town. It's a citywide land bank. So by keeping the at-large ones, we thought we could not get into issues where people are specifically focused on one district versus another. We can have that kind of overall broad approach to vacant abandoned property issues. The city manager, the community development director, the corporation council, next one, represent from the real estate community. So a realtor, a licensed realtor who has some expertise in markets, of real estate market, what could do well here, what could do well there. This was a suggestion. We originally suggested one representative from the city of Peoria neighborhoods. That's a city of Peoria resident in a specific neighborhood. At the last council meeting, it was suggested to us by Councilwoman Jensen to up that number to 2 members. And the Peoria County Treasurer, as we talked about, they manage the trustee process, and then another member of the county board and the county board chair nominates to be a part of that. The reason we want those county representatives is because a lot of these issues are on the county level, and we wanted them to be really coming to the table with us to find solutions to what's happening in Peoria. So what would the city of Peoria Land Bank do? So these are some of the objectives that we want to highlight what the land bank will specifically be focused on. As I talked about earlier, really identifying and obtaining properties before they get to a point that the only thing that can really be done to them is demolish them. Unfortunately, when properties sit vacant, the longer and longer they sit vacant, they get to a point where they have to be demolished. There's not a market to put money back into the property because it costs too much to fix it up, and we're forced to tear it down. Hopefully we can identify these properties sooner and get to them, get them rehabbed, and get people back in living in these houses, and hopefully get some more home ownership in our neighborhoods. We can look at larger areas where we might have multiple blocks, multiple vacant lots that we can put together to really try to get to a private developer to do some townhouse development or some single family infill as well. Really work with the county treasurer and the county to improve that trustee process that I talked about. One of the main goal of any land bank is really to take property and put it back on the tax roll. If we can get to a property before we have to demolish it, that property with the structure on it can generate a lot more property tax than a vacant lot. The other thing that we hope the land bank and the board can specifically do is really work to advocate and bring awareness to housing issues within our community, and the value home ownership plays in the neighborhoods, the value that affordable housing plays and the role affordable housing plays in our entire community, the right that people have for a safe house to live in, and we hope that the land bank can bring additional focus and attention to that issue. So what does the land bank do? The land bank really is that kind of overarching overarching board to really make sure that the land bank is fulfilling those objectives and staying on point. So they work to any contractual items that the land bank would be involved in. They make sure that those are going forward. They make sure that the service delivery and fiscal management of the land bank are happening. If any grants come in, they make sure that the staff is doing that. The biggest thing we're going to be asking the board to do after they get in place and a land manager position gets hired is specifically work to change the vacant lot strategy and vacant property strategy the city of Peoria has. So with that, when that gets going and those are in places, we'll have many additional public input meetings so we can hear the input from the public and citizens when we are creating that strategy, what we want it to look like, what we want it to do, what sort of activities we specifically want the land bank to focus on, what are the priorities and goals of all this going forward. And that's kind of what the board will take that input from the public and really put together a document that will then take back to all of the city council to approve, adopt, and kind of be our blueprint going forward. So what will be the next steps with this land bank? It's going before council May 11th. If it's approved by council on May 11th, May 12th, we'll issue a press release asking interested parties who are interested in those open board spots to submit an application to the mayor's office. She'll take all the applications, review them, and essentially make a recommendation to the council for their appointment to the land banking board. May 13th, we'll post the positions to get them going. June 8th, we'll take the appointments of the board back to council for approval. Hopefully about June 8th, the new staff will start. Then the third week of June will be the first meeting of the land board. And then after that, hopefully in July, start holding some additional public input sessions on creating that strategy of how the city should deal with vacant and abandonment issues throughout the community. So with that, I'm open to any questions, concerns, thoughts you guys might have. Happy to answer them. Andy.
So per item on the land bank money that they're giving out, the money is supposed to be used and focused on 1 to 6 unit low or affordable housing. Is the land bank going to have that same strategy of focusing on only affordable housing using the funds from IDA?
No. Our agreement says for us to have the funds, we have to create a land bank. This structure approves that. That's the only requirement that we have from them. It's been through their legal department. This structure works. That'll be the only caveat. It will not just be focusing on affordable housing.
Will this change anything on the county trustee process and how the county trustee handles land and the disposition of land?
It will not immediately, but we hope by involving the county treasurer in this process, we can bring some more attention to that issue and really work to fix that process going forward.
What's broken with that process, aside from earlier you mentioned taxes, but currently people are able to go out and purchase land from the county trustee. For example, the city has a vacant land in the North Valley since July 15th of last year. I've been trying to purchase and haven't been able to get movement on. What would be different if the county trustee owned it? They would sell it to me and we would have a transaction. If the city has it in a land bank, what would be the difference?
So a couple questions in that statement. The first, what are some of the problems with the trustee process besides what I said earlier? One of the major problems that we see is they don't screen who purchases properties. Last year, multiple LLCs from out of state came in, purchased a significant amount of properties for the minimum bid of $800. Within about a month, they were listed up on Facebook, other websites for 10 or 15,000 live and ready. People who don't live here, they didn't invest the property. We've also seen people purchase these properties and immediately move someone in. They move in, they realize that there's a ton of code violations, but they're already stuck. They paid a deposit. Now they have to work with us and Prairie State Legal to go through that whole process. That's a major flaw of the system, that we don't screen who does and doesn't purchase properties. The other major flaw of the system from a city standpoint is that we pay for all the maintenance of all the lots. And so that's a $300,000 or $400,000 expense that the city has. As the vacant lots continue to grow and grow and grow, the city's expenses continue to go up. With your specific question about a vacant lot you wanted to purchase, from my understanding, that lot wasn't for sale, and that the strategy that the land bank might come up with might be different than that, and that's why we want to put this process forward so that board can have a public body. So when you do have a concern like that and you want to purchase that and you don't agree with the decision we made, you can talk to the board and talk to them about the process.
Joe, do you have that document that I was trying to find it, the city council now, that showed what the charge of that land bank was going to be? I know I saw the structure, you showed the structure, but it was very specific about what their charge would be.
I don't have that to be able to pull it up.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
But there's lots of errors in that document, just to let you know. Corporation council is not listed. You talk about the city council communication.
Correct, but we've updated it since. I'm not sure if the new agenda has come out. The Corporation Council and the Addition Neighborhood Resident is not, because that was from 2 weeks ago. It'll be in the updated one that gets released for next Tuesday.
So there's three positions that can be applied for. Two for neighborhood residents and a representative from the real estate community. There's really only two positions, I guess, that the rank and file people can apply for, correct?
Three, yes.
Well, the real estate is going to come from real estate.
There's two neighborhood positions, correct.
So in this council communication, which maybe I'm outdated now, is very concerning when it says the chairman shall have the right to supervise and direct the management and operation of the land bank and to make all decisions as to policy and otherwise which may arise between meetings of the board of directors. That's really concerning. That's the board is meaningless then. Okay? And what is the actual breakdown of the 300,000? That's confusing. Because you said half the funding is coming from this and half the funding is coming from that. So it's $100,000 a year to fund up the land manager, or are you paying them with benefits, like if they were a city employee, or they don't really get benefits, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's for the land manager position, the half a FT in legal, half an FT community service.
What's the dollar breakout? And do those people get benefits, or they're just...
Yes, they will get benefits.
Okay. So are they like, how much is, some of the money is coming from the general fund, so how much are we paying for those people?
I can follow up with that. I don't have them off the top of my head.
And you can post a feasibility study on the website?
Yeah. Martha.
You mentioned earlier in the presentation that the city of Peoria trustee that people were taking care of the land, and we're proposing that some of the taxing bodies, or all of the taxing bodies, be a part of the cost. Is that what I understood?
No, I said that there's state legislation that essentially right now is before the House that would essentially the instead of the money going to the trustee down in Edwardsville, some of those funds and the county proceeds, they could be offset before those funds go to the county trustee and then dispersed out to the taxing bodies. Maintenance of those lots can be charged against that money before that money gets divvied up. Yeah, so every year so every year the county trustee makes probably about $100,000 and $120,000 from redemption of property tax interest rates, the 18% I talked about. That revenue that they get could go for maintenance if the county treasurer decides, and also any proceeds from the county auction could also essentially go to the maintenance of the lots as well.
So those requirements that the city requires, the city study, are not reducing taxes.
Could you say that again?
Are you receiving taxes from those properties?
No, we do not. From city-owned property, we don't pay property taxes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
That's
If the state legislation gets passed, it will allow the county treasurer to make that decision. The taxing bodies won't necessarily have to pay, they just might get a smaller cut of the proceeds from the auction.
It's my understanding on that those other the school district and those other taxing bodies, wanted some, for some land banks, those other taxing bodies had to agree to give, split that with, the land bank.
Well, so
The delinquent tax.
the way the state legislation is written, it's not passed or anything yet. It says the county treasurer may do that. What we've seen interesting thing that the Winnebago Land Bank, that's the Northern Illinois one, is doing. Essentially, their land bank became their trustee, and they essentially had a similar process that we have, where that revenue and some of those sales proceeds were leaving their community and going to someone, I think it was in DeKalb, where their trustee is. Our trustee's in Edwardsville. The trustee that we have in Edwardsville is actually the trustee for about 90% of the counties in Illinois. But Winnebago County had a different one, but very similar structure. They were seeing all of that interest rates that people were paying when they did redeem their taxes, and 25% of the proceeds from the auction really leaving their community and going to an attorney somewhere else who wasn't really maintaining the property or really didn't devote much attention to the process. So their land bank, when they were formed, they got the same grant in 2018 and moved forward with creating a land bank. Their taxing bodies came together. The land bank actually became the trustee. So right off the top of the money that they generate through that tax interest, $200,000 essentially goes to the maintenance of these lots. So instead of now the city of Rockford spending that $200,000 to cut lots, the land bank is. So it really immediately saved the city of Rockford $200,000. The other thing they did is by really specifically looking and focusing on this process, they really upgraded the entire process. So all of the auctions, they digitalized it, put it all online. So it was a more transparent system of people can see bids on these properties. They actually increased the average. So for the last 20 years when their agent was doing the sale, they were averaging probably about $200,000 a year in county sales at the auction. In the first year, they did about $800,000 of sales. So actually, by kind of taking a harder look at that system and just doing a better job, they're actually increasing the amount for the taxing bodies. So they actually became the trustee, and it worked out really well for them in the whole process. The other thing to keep in mind is, sometimes it's not about the short-term revenue that gets created or spent on anything. It's really the long-term. If a property keeps going through that cycle where they're not paying property taxes, that could be 10, 12 years of no one's getting any taxes from those systems, where identify in 2 years and we don't have to demolish the property. Hopefully after the land bank gets a free and clear title, we can get it right back to the private market where they are actually paying a property tax bill on a structure at a property, and it really kind of can have more long-term effects.
So the chairman of the board, is that a paid position?
No, I mean, it's the city manager, so.
So the new city manager, they said that chairman would have an exclusive kind of like executive right to make certain decisions. And is the document going to be saying that transactions less than $15,000 is at the chairman's discretion?
Yes, that's the current structure of the current policy of the city. Any purchase below $15,000 is at the discretion of the city manager. Yes.
As part of that, again, with the land bank, what's different with the land bank? Because currently the city manager has the discretion to sell it and trade land as he sees fit using the same structure. Is there, with the land bank in place and with them meeting quarterly or whatever it is, the city manager still has all the rights and abilities to do whatever with the land that he would so choose, correct?
Yes, with a few additional reporting requirements, but all of that could possibly change once the land bank board is created and in place, and if they want to change a different policy of how we dispose of land, that will be kind of what they decide at that point. But right now, this is the kind of recommendation we're making.
And those policies would have to be approved by the city council?
The ordinance is specifically written as it is, so any ordinance that would get changed, whether it's that piece of section, would have to go before council to get changed. Yes.
A policy about,
We would want the board to set a kind of a disposal land policy of how they'd want that to work, where if we denied, my suggestion would be they are going to meet monthly. I think that's one of the changes that isn't reflected.
determines that, the city council or the board itself?
The policy? Well, I believe, I don't want to speak for our city council, but the best practice will be the board working with the leaders, the neighborhood leaders and input in creating that policy and strategy, and then it will come back before council for adoption, similar to what we've done with other documents. It'll go back to council for adoption. Councilman?
I was just going to say, in response to some of the questions that
You can't really take that one.
I was just going to say, in response to some of the questions Andy has raised in the discussion, I think once the land bank is set up, it might be different than how it currently is, what the practice is currently, because we can develop a strategy based on the input that we get from the residents that live in these areas and the other stakeholders on developing some of the property and whether it's affordable housing or it's something else. But right now it's just kind of hit or miss, and we have all these vacant lots that most people don't want.
No, they're not for sale, according to Joe. And that's what I'm trying, I want to find out. Who has the strategy now? Who has the discretion?
But I'd say if there isn't a definite strategy, this is going to help us develop a proactive strategy with input with input from stakeholders and residents to improve these areas of the city where we have so many vacant lots.
Well, and I think just to add to what Councilman Jensen said, I think that one of the things that the board could put in place if they choose to do is that process where if someone is denied, like they want a full report of the request for vacant lots in the city, things like that, and they want to see all that, where that doesn't exist currently. This is a much more kind of open process by establishing this, if that's what the board chooses to set as their policy.
And plus, it will allow us to leverage a lot more money for these vacant lots, for the upkeep of them and other things, because if the state passes the legislation, if we have a land bank, we have the opportunity to get a lot more funding than we do right now, and I think it also opens the doors to other potential funding.
So I came this evening, not because I know whether there should be a land bank.
Right.
I came because what I continually hear from the city, and I'm hearing it from you again, from you also, that we're going to go and do this land bank, and yet we don't know how we're going to engage the public, how we're going to really engage so that we don't keep doing things the same way. We have had systemic racism and institutional racism in this community since redlining, right? And since probably the inception. And all I see is the same old thing being done here. We want to combat community deterioration. Yet we don't know what values we will use to make decisions. Are we going to have a value that we want to prevent gentrification? Do we have a value that how will we engage the community? How will we engage the people on the south side of the north and the southeast block?
And I understand those concerns, but
But
I
I'm
think
saying
the proposal is to adopt the land bank and then adopt the strategy, because there's a timeline. I think where they have to get, I know, but let me finish, just let me finish. My understanding is that this money was offered to us by the Attorney General's office to be a pilot program. And I did raise concerns and push for a deferral because I wanted to make sure we had a public meeting, and Joe went and asked for an extension, but we only have an extension for a week or two in order for us to get that money to start the project. And then what you would have from us
$200,000. Are you crazy? Are you kidding me?
So maybe that's something. So
Yeah, but why
that's
didn't we
changing
let
what-
go of the process? That's what Joyce is saying. Why do we always back in the
And
process?
I understand that frustration because I'm often frustrated because we're always put between a rock and a hard place and we have to make a decision now. But all I'm saying, if you don't move forward and adopt something to create a land bank at the next meeting, we will not get the money from the Attorney General's office and it'll go to another community. So we won't be able to move forward now.
Did we sign an agreement that we must have a land bank in place to get the money?
We have a grant agreement that says the 100,000 would not be available if we don't have a land bank in place.
And then the 200,000 from the Attorney General says the same thing?
We don't have that agreement yet.
Because on IDA's website, they say that they will give the money, and you are not required to have a land bank if you as a community determine there is a better way to facilitate this process. So to create this land bank, it seems without any input and without some forward thinking and engagement with citizens, that we are jumping to get this money and going through hoops that may not be required at this time, right? Because you can put all the other framework in place when you're doing all this. The question remains is if there was no citizen input, if there is no framework or anything else to even start with, it is hard for me, and maybe city council members have more information, but it is hard for a resident of Peoria to see that there is any strategy, that there's been any other thought outside of what is happening or is happening here, when there are other examples across the country that show that the members of a land bank are either culled from the leadership of neighborhood associations, residents of Peoria. There's no residency requirements per this, so your realtor could be from Morton, your neighbors from Peoria. Like there's nothing that says it has to be a resident, and I think that matters. And especially when it comes to the lion's share of this property is in the north end and the south end, and no one was talked to about any of that. And when you say that the city has all this land and we want to sell it and get it onto the tax rolls, but we're not selling land today, what changes with a land bank that we could do today and not cost us a dime? That's the real question.
And to one of your concerns about the residence requirement, we did add that it'll be in the coming document, I believe, that.
No, I know you brought it up, but it's not addressed. It's not.
Well, no, I believe that one of the backside will require
Correct.
all members of the board to be resident.
Why was this structure for the board composition decided? Because as Andy and I, there should be, this is just status quo. This is how we always make decisions, and we're never going to have real change unless who's making decisions on these boards change, and that it's representative of the people who live in those neighborhoods.
So right now, the proposal is that it be 2 residents from the neighborhoods. So it's not that what you have isn't current, that's one of the things I asked you. So I'm asking you, do you think it should be, and I don't know what the total number is, I don't have it in front of me, should it be 5? I mean, but if this is your opportunity to suggest that, if you want us to change it.
But this doesn't even say they could all come from North Peoria.
I asked that at least the two
So
the two members of the board that are representing the neighborhoods, where I asked that they reside in the neighborhoods where the majority of the
So-
land banking is going to occur.
But that's not on the.
So
that's
the
what
rec-
we're on.
That's going to be in the proposal that.
The recommendation that's coming back to council on Tuesday, I don't know if the agenda has gotten posted yet for Tuesday. There was a first reading. We do make changes. It comes back to council with the changes made. We do change to the recommendation that 2 neighborhood residents, and we actually, and council can take this recommendation or they cannot take it, but we specifically put that they have to live in different council districts to make sure that there are not two in North Peoria or somewhere else. The other thing that I think is important to keep in mind is every board appointee is appointed by the mayor and approved by city council. So all of those boards, the 3 board spots of the neighborhood spots, the 2 neighborhood and the real estate person has to be approved by the mayor and the city council. So I think they do hear your feedback that they want specifically those representatives to be in neighborhoods that have a lot of these issues.
Yeah, but someone in North Peoria is not going to know most likely what to do on the south end or the North Valley or up on the King's Bluff. You have to live there and get to be there 24/7. And I am so excited that Andy Diaz bought the lots behind me because they were owned by the county trustee and the city's responsible for mowing them. And I had to call the inspector every time to get them mowed because they were 12, 14 inches tall. But you guys don't have enough money. That's one of the criteria of this lending. You don't have any money to help maintain the lots that you have, and then now you're going to go get more.
Well, the city does not own the county trustee lots.
No, but you're responsible for maintaining.
We are only responsible because we choose to, because we care about the neighborhoods. There's no legal requirement for us to do it. We do it because no one else does. Yeah.
But I have 10 questions, so I'm going to email them to you.
Perfect.
But I thought I'd pull out a couple of thoughts. Before I get to my one question I thought that we could talk about today, I want to make a statement. The statement would be that I think we should establish the limit. It's not totally together, and we know we need a lot more community input, but we need to get the money. And once we get the money, we need to fix it, because exactly what you said, it's the same old thing over and over. And now we know, they know that it's messed up, but we need to fix it. But if we don't have the money, we can't do what we need to do if we don't get the money. So we need to get the money.
Can I just make one, because you said we keep using the word, we need community input.
Yes.
We need community decision-making on this board.
I will take that amendment to my statement. Yes, that's exactly what I meant to say. So I agree with that that's what we need, but we need to get the money as well, and then we need to get that and put it together. One of my 10 questions is about the abandoned property process. Joe, you stated that it takes 2 years for us to go through the process right now. When we established this land bank committee or program or whatever it's called, will that make the process move faster, or will it be the same?
Will that make the process move faster than the 2 years or more than we?
You stated that you take the abandoned property process to gain access to property, basically in any communication, to be able to implement a judicial deed.
That process is established by state statute. It'll still go for 2 years. The reality right now with the staffing levels we have, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. But with dedicated staff and a land manager focusing on that process with the legal staff, it'll 2 years once the taxes are identified and we go after a property, probably about 27 months after it goes through the court process. Probably about 27 or 28 months.
So you're saying even after we establish this land bank, it's not going to make that go any faster?
That's the state statute. That's as fast as we can move on it.
But maybe that's something that we can lobby our legislators or maybe communities of land banks to make that, less time for you to be able to declare a property abandoned. Right now, it has to be delinquent on taxes for 2 years before it's considered abandoned under law, under
because I think there's ways we can expedite that, and that would help us get to the place where we have investors in the area. We can move on them now and not wait 2 and 3 years.
Right.
That is the problem, that we're letting the property sit too long, and then they're not any value, and then we can't even afford to demolish them. And when we can't afford to demolish them, then we can't even pay the tax. We don't have any remedy for the city to gain the back taxes. So,
But if the city doesn't believe that black and brown people can develop in their neighborhoods, Clyde, it changes nothing.
well, but we can, if we fix this, man, we can show them, Andy, that we can. And I know we
The
can.
structure does not allow that.
Well, in that structure, we almost don't even need that. We just need to be able to get the property. So, but that's a discussion we need to have. Let's get the money, have a discussion, and then come up with solutions that fix the problem. What I've heard and what I've read in the documents there's nothing in there that fixes the problems in my neighborhood.
Right.
You can have $500,000 and a group of 20 people on the board, and what you're talking about doesn't fix the problems in my neighborhood. And what I'm trying to say is we need to go ahead and get the money, and I think this community is now I like this statement, a woke, sleeping giant that knows what we need to do, and when we get the money, then we need to do some things that we can fix the problems in our neighborhoods, because our problem is a lot larger than I think we realize.
Well, the question
And so,
The
I'm sorry.
land bank, it's my understanding, also has to work in concert with other entities, whether that's code enforcement, other entities that are out there. I mean, just a land bank being there, the first thing I thought about is, it's like, there are some land banks that work in concert with a land trust, so that's another part of it. We're talking about doing a land bank now with this land bank, it's my understanding, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of right now, I know that land means power. I know that land means wealth. My only concern in this whole process is for us to go ahead and develop that structure that is going to be fair from an equity standpoint for people of color, because I know that the majority of those vacant lands and abandoned houses are in areas of where brown and black folks live. I know they're coming out of that. I know when I see 2 representatives, I don't know if there needs to be some language added that says that one of those or those representatives need to come out of a certain percentage of where the majority of these vacant properties are located. But I know that we have wealth disparities, and I'm just saying that when we talk about doing land banking, I'm saying, yes, I think it's another tool that we could use to change our neighborhoods. How it's going to be structured, we got some more work to do on that. That's all. I agree with you that I think we need to do this.
And my part B of my one question was, is there a targeted land bank area or areas? Is there a target? Because I heard a couple answers to that question.
One of the target areas we'll specifically focus on off the gate will be the MacArthur corridor. The MacArthur corridor? The similar area that was in the MacArthur plan, I don't know the exact areas, but with the synergy of a PCCO getting the development contract to do some of the pre-development work, just to hope we've gotten a demo grant that's specifically focused in that area, and just kind of that's going to be one of the main focuses is to really work to put additional resources into that area with the other additional resources council have already approved. Well, I mean, I think all of, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that we won't focus everywhere, but if we're picking specific areas of, they can't start everywhere from day one, and I think that'll be the initial focus, and then branch out from there.
But this sort of gets back to who's making the decisions.
Right.
Well, that
Some of the decisions have been made.
no, that decision was in our documentation that we suggested to council. That is what the board will decide.
My closing statement, Joe, I want to say that the MacArthur corridor, when we wrote the new TIF, was really the backbone of the area that was looking at the south side to the west. Then that really was all it was, is a placeholder. It wasn't a specific area or to say this is a place to develop. Now, I live on the south side, and many people that are here live on the south side. If you're trying to do development, if you go land bank the area on where Harms Forest was, that's probably one of the worst places to try to market. And so I guess even though it's on the MacArthur, that might not be the best. I'm just saying we need to have more conversation about what was talked about years ago, because a lot of information that's very important for it to be successful is not included in the dialogue that we have on the table now.
Well, I think that's the important thing to keep in mind, that the land bank establishes this tool, but the real kind of strategy and planning will take place after the board is in place, the land manager's hired, so they can get that impact and have those dialogue and discussions as a group to create that strategy of what the residents want.
Can the land bank be designed according to why it has to be private? There are towns that have land bank authorities that work very well across the city.
Yes, if someone wanted to start a separate land bank, they could. I don't know the legality of all of that, but there's multiple structures where it's not city controlled.
Is the land bank own the land then?
The city owns the land.
Okay, but like one of the IDA things that says, like for doing repairs, deciding on a home, qualifies and eligible use of grant dollars, because you say that you're gonna try to get more grant dollars, right? Possibly for fixing up some of these properties that you get that before they're abandoned, before they get so bad that they can be demolished. Right?
Correct, but any new money we get would have different criteria than the one from the land bank capacity program.
But it says funds that are used for redevelopment of vacant and abandoned properties that are owned by the land bank. So would there be other strings that somehow the land bank has to become the owner of the property in order to be qualified to get other IDA funds or other federal funds or something like that?
Perhaps.
And then you have to do environmental compliance like with EPA and IHPA and all that kind of stuff?
It would just
Be a requirement of-
likely, with most grants that we do, we'd have to, if we're doing any of that, we would have to with most grants we get. Well, it is 6:30. I want to just appreciate everyone. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. If you have any additional comments, my phone number's there, my email address, let me know. We did keep the minutes, and we'll try to summarize kind of the concerns we have of everything, and we'll make sure to get that to the council too. Robin, did you have one?
That's what I was wondering, if somebody was writing down all the concerns.
Yeah, we recorded it, so we'll go back and make sure all the council gets that documentation. Martha, what was that? Martha, what did you say? Yeah, I'll email it to you. And we'll post it at appreciatepeoria.com. Councilman?